my name is Angelica, and this is the Angelica Unfiltered channel where I talk about health, wellness, weight loss, but mostly fat acceptance. A lot of you guys have reached out to me and asked me to cover the Biggest Loser documentary. And when I'm filming this, it's August 28th, so I'm scared no one will care about my video because everything in pop culture just moves so fast. But I figured we'd cover it anyway because you guys have asked for my opinions. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to my notes here in my Ed Hardy notebook. So I'm going to do a little summary for the people that did not watch, and by little, I mean I will be summarizing everything. You know, I like to be very thorough with my summaries. The documentary was 120 minutes total, around there. So hopefully I can talk fast enough and my video won't be longer than the documentary, but no promises there. Obviously the documentary or docuseries is on Netflix, so I was watching it there, but I was so surprised that you couldn't speed up Netflix. Like, I wanted to turn that bitch on 1.5 or 2 times speed so bad, just because I'm so used to watching everything so quickly. On YouTube, I speed up like almost every single video I watch. But before we get into it, I'm wearing my enchanted labradorite necklace and earrings. If you want to support my business, I will have everything linked down below. Let's make a fun promo code for this video. Use the code LOSER to save 20% off. Usually I only do 10%. So the beginning of the documentary or the docuseries is a montage of a bunch of different clips. We have audition clips, we have people crying, we have the fitness trainer screaming at them, you know, just showing people like what this thing is going to be about, you know. The first person we talked to is 𝒸𝒾𝓃𝓀𝓈, I believe, and he was the winner from season 8. Danny started Biggest Loser at 430 pounds. He ended up losing 239 pounds, and when he won the Biggest Loser, he was 191 pounds. During his season finale, there were 10 million viewers, and he lost all of that weight in a span of 9 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days. Let's round up to 7 months. So I did a little calculation here. If he lost 239 pounds, you know, divide that by 7 months, that is 34.14 pounds a month. And then if we make that day by day, so 34.14 divided by 30 is about 1.13 pounds a day. Danny claims that when he lost all the weight, he really thought he knew everything about nutrition and exercise, fat loss, etc., but apparently not, because, shocker, Danny is fat now. Danny seems like a nice guy, so I won't berate him like other super morbidly obese people on the internet, like humongous Aubrey Gordon, but in case you're just listening to this, Danny is large and in charge, we'll put it that way. And they didn't give an age for him, but like, I feel like he's like my parents' age, like maybe a little bit younger, like 50s-ish. But sometimes when you're obese, like you look older, so sorry if you're younger than that, Danny, and that offends you. And you happen to be watching this video, which you probably aren't. We get to know a little bit about Danny's backstory. He said he remembered around like the 3rd grade, he started being teased for being a little bit chubbier. And that's like during the time he realized that he was like a little bit different than the other kids. He grew up in Oklahoma and he was in a pretty successful band, he says. And he knew from a very young age, like he always like wanted to get out there. He wanted to like get himself out there. He wanted to be known. You know, we have a little clout goblin, no shame. Danny says at one point, he's probably lost over 1,000 pounds in the last 20 years, but he keeps gaining it all back. Jesus. Danny starts to talk about how his weight has held him back in life, and he talks about how when he's gone to the fair with his kids a handful of times, he wasn't able to go on some of the rides, and it feels like he's really starting to miss out on life. One day, he walked past the living room and he saw Biggest Loser on the TV, and he thought, they're just making fun of fat people, you know, that's like really mean. But next week, he saw Biggest Loser again on TV playing, and he actually sat down to watch it. And he quickly started to connect with the people's stories that were on that show, and he thought the people on the show were like very brave. Like he couldn't imagine going up on that stage on national television, taking off his shirt, being weighed in front of millions and millions of people. But he thought this might be the one chance to save his life. So he decided he wanted to go on the Biggest Loser. Also, Danny thought when he was watching the contestants competing in the challenges, he thought like, you know, I could do that. And then he was kind of being, I was about to say a backseat driver, but he's just watching TV. He's like, you know, he's like getting all cocky. He's like, you know, I could do that. Like you guys are doing that wrong. You should do it this way and this way. You know, like kind of talking at the TV, thinking that why is someone always trying to call me when I'm on the fucking YouTube? And it's always this, potential spam, fuck off, I then answered your first 5,000 phone calls. Why am I going to answer the 501 phone call? Thank you very much. Anyway, so now we meet our first producer, and his name is David Broom, I think. It's spelled Broom, and then there's an E at the end, so Broom-meh. This is not an English channel, so don't come here thinking I'm going to be pronouncing things correctly. It's very ableist of you. I'm dyslexic. David got this idea for the show Biggest Loser because one day, he's leaving the shitter at work, and there's this bulletin board in front of the bathroom door, and when he exited, he saw this little sign that said, super morbidly obese, humongous fat person seeking personal trainer. And he thought, that would be like kind of a cool TV show. So then, that little wheel in his brain started spinning. But he was low-key kind of scared that Americans wouldn't like this show because it would be like putting a mirror up to their face. Now we get to meet Ryan. And Ryan is an actor. He grew up doing a lot of different commercials. He was in like Pepsi commercials, just like a random kind of like commercials for like products, products like commercials in between shows, you know what I mean? And Ryan was the winner of season 1. Then we are starting to see his audition clip, and Ryan is talking about his personal life and shit. And in his audition clip, Ryan is in the car and he shows this bakery that he goes to, I think he said 4 times a week. And he goes there, basically does a binge, and no one in his life knows this, not even his wife. And he is a secret eater. He is a closet eater. And, his acting career kind of went to a halt in around 2003, 2004 because he got too fat. And no one wanted to put him in commercials. And when he was doing his audition tape, he compared to, sneaking out and eating donuts or, like indulging to someone that uses drugs. Sorry, I have to censor myself here because we can't talk about difficult conversations on YouTube without getting censored or in trouble. And Ryan's talking, he's like, yeah, I've always loved reality TV, like Jersey Shore, Survivor, and it kind of just made sense that he would want to audition for The Biggest Loser, because he's an actor, but he loves reality TV, and now there is a reality TV show about fat people losing weight, and this is, like, right up his alley. This is for him. This was made for him. So this is what my notes look like. So I'm trying to make sure that I read everything. And Ryan also said that he was hoping that the cameras would hold him accountable because, he's a secret eater. And no one ever knew that he was doing these naughty things because he always did it alone and didn't tell any people about it afterwards. So now we're getting to see clips of Julian Michaels and Bob Harper. They're showing clips of past contestants talking about them. I think David said Julian Michaels intimidated everyone. She is beautiful. And she has this, like, gorgeous hair, and she always wears these cute outfits, but, she's gonna want to fucking cut out your heart, like, she's mean. And then this other lady says that Julian is tough, but Bob is, like, Yoda, here for every piece of you. Both of the trainers kind of had, like, their persona, like, their shtick. The other producer, who I'll talk about more later, he said that making The Biggest Loser was like flying a plane while still building the plane. Then Ryan pops in and he says he didn't know, like, how the show was gonna go, like, if the show was gonna be more inspiration or if this was gonna be more of, like, a comedy show, like, mocking people. Like, the first season, it was kind of, like, up in the air, and I guess they couldn't really determine what the show was gonna be like until, basically editing. Then we get to know a little bit more about the hosts. From season 1 to 3, the host was Caroline Rhea, and she's a comedian, but you may know her as the aunt from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I didn't know that she was a comedian, but I was born in 97, so I feel like Sabrina the Witch was, like, already going on during that time, so it was a little before me. Danny starts to talk about how there was really weird challenges on the show, like they had to build things with bread and cake, but they had to do it only using their teeth and not their hands. I feel like that's so weird. Like, Danny says, like, they were just put in very ridiculous situations. Then we have JD, which is the other producer. JD was scared that absolutely no one would lose weight on the show. And he remembers the first week they were sitting down with the NBC CEO and they were like watching everyone get weighed in, and everyone lost a bunch of fucking weight. I think, let's see, the first person lost 12 pounds, the next person lost 16 pounds, and David, the producer, said that everyone was so shocked that these people lost weight, and that made the NBC CEO as well as all the producers very happy. David, the producer, said that he chose the name Biggest Loser to kind of like shock people into watching, but then realizing the show was actually inspirational. Ryan then says that this was the first reality TV show to show physical transformations for people, and he states that, you really can't fake weight loss. This almost felt like the realest reality TV. But after a while, the show started to become more about winning than about health. Ryan says that in the morning before breakfast, he would work out for an hour and a half. Then after lunch, he would work out again for another hour. Then we start to talk about the final episode of season 1, so the finale of Ryan's season. And he said that this was filmed in the American Idol studio, and obviously Ryan wins, spoiler alert, even though we already talked about that earlier. And he said that during the last 10 days of the show, he was doing stuff super unhealthy. He said that he was doing a master cleanse, which included drinking only lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup, very Pinteresty vibes. And before the show, they had to do like a little urine test, and the doctor doing the urine test said that there was blood in Ryan's pee, which meant that he was super dehydrated. And when he won, Julia Michaels gave him a hug and said, "Thank you, you just made me a millionaire," and that kind of threw Ryan off. He thought that was a little weird, which made me start to speculate. I'm like, I probably should have said this at the beginning of this video, but I've never watched The Biggest Loser. I just said I was born in 97. The show started in 2004, and then so I would have been 7 during that time. And then it ended in 2016, which I would have been 19 years old. I never really watched the show. My mom didn't either. The only shows my mom watched growing up was the Extreme House Makeovers, which I guess makes sense now that I'm thinking about it, because my mom did a lot of things with Habitat for Humanity growing up. Like, she's just a very charitable woman. But the only other shows besides that my mom watched was like American Pickers and 2.5 Men. So maybe I've seen like clips of Biggest Loser, but I wasn't really like a stan. This wasn't really like playing on TV in my household. So now we meet Bob Harper. Bob starts talking about how everyone is obsessed with weight loss. If you sit down at the dinner table or if you see someone you haven't seen in a while, like a coworker or a family member, and you see him and you've lost weight, they want to know what you've done. Bob's, keeps reiterating how everyone cares about their weight and how they look, really instilling the fact that human beings can be very superficial. Bob says that when he was growing up, Jane Fonda, Suzanne Summers, the Thigh Master, Richard Simmons were very, very popular, and he always felt at home in the gym. I think Bob is like a personal trainer. I assume he's in like training and stuff for it. He said that, I think this is like during the 80s and 90s, that the gym was a very hot spot for celebs, and it was a very intense scene. You could see models, actors, everyone on TV was always at the gym in LA. He remembers one day he was teaching this 9 a.m. class at a gym, and Julia Roberts comes in, and this is like Pretty Women era Julia Roberts, and she loved her and she loved him. From then on out, Bob's career just like basically exploded. He heard about this new TV show being produced called Biggest Losers, and obviously he got the job, but he was a little bit nervous because he's never worked with obese people before. Like, everyone he's worked with has always been a size 0 or someone like trying to get 6-packs. He's working at a gym in LA with Julia Roberts. Many obese people aren't probably walking through those doors. So this was a very new experience for him, but he had the confidence that he could make it work, but he also knew that the show would be a big hit. And now we get enemy of the channel, your fat foe, Aubrey Gordon. We're introduced to Aubrey Gordon for some reason. So many of you guys were like talking in my comments section. You're like, why the fuck is she in the show? And I'm like, I don't know, because she's like a professional fat person. Like, is she like, she has to share her expertise? But I guess she also wrote some blogs about The Biggest Loser. I don't know. She's like literally the only person in the documentary that has no tie to The Biggest Loser in any single way, besides her fucking blog. Aubrey Gordon, if you make another documentary, you need to hire me as the opposing viewpoint because I've made videos about you, so I'm an expert against you. So Aubrey Gordon, she said the first season of this show came on when she was in college. Her roommate watched it. Aubrey Gordon didn't. I want to make that very clear. Aubrey Gordon did not watch this show. Her roommate did. Did you hear that correctly? Aubrey Gordon's roommate watched this show, and after that semester, she sent herself to adult fat camp. Toxic. You know, they're interviewing Aubrey Gordon, and, you know, like, they're asking, like, what do you think about this show? Because allegedly you've never seen an episode, but you're an expert against The Biggest Losers. Okay. Aubrey Gordon thinks the show kind of, like, pushes people to believe, this is a quote, from here on out, this is a quote, nothing you can do in your life will be celebrated as much as getting thin. You know, because fat people have absolutely nothing else to celebrate in life, like graduating college, getting a job, getting married, having children, buying a house. No. Being thin is the only thing that fat people can celebrate in their life. Okay, just want to make sure that's true. But viewers were very inspired by this show, and it was a massive success. A humongous win, if you will. Back to JD, the producer. You know, everyone became a celebrity after this show was aired. You know, people went on talk shows after, you know, everyone had their little press run and shit. David, the producer, says that 500 people applied to be on season 2, but then thousands of people applied to be on season 3. You know, this TV show went from just being a moment into a movement. Aubrey Gordon says, quote, everybody wants to be seen and be around others who understand you. This was the only vehicle at the time for fat people to have space to connect with others. Obviously, because fat people have absolutely nothing in common with other fat people. Or I guess other people in general. JD, the producer, says that, you know, we're not looking for contestants that are happy and fat. Like Aubrey Gordon. We don't want Aubrey Gordon on the show because we know she's not going to give up her 3,000 calorie Dunkin' Donuts frozen latte in the morning with her baker's dozen donuts. You know, we're looking for sad and overweight people as contestants. And guess what? There are millions of different candidates in America, LOL, because everyone's fat as fuck here. Even back then, our obesity rate was still very high in the early 2000s. And you know, the right contestant will have a great story. And obviously that's important when making television. So now we're introduced to Joelle Gwen, and she was a contestant on season 7. She's a healthy weight now. I'll put pictures of her on the screen. And she says, you know, she's always had that face card, but she's never had that body, you know. She's always been a pretty face. Joelle starts to talk about her childhood. She says she's always been chubby. She grew up in the 70s where everyone was super, super thin. One day, as an adult, she felt super sick and she decided to go to the ER. And they took her blood sugar and it was 300 to 400. And then she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Joelle never thought that she would get type 2 diabetes or like get to this point, and it felt like a really big wake-up call. But then, you know, another day happens, and one day she's eating a double fish fillet combo meal with fries and a Fanta, or maybe it would be a high C back then. And she was watching The Biggest Loser, and, you know, she was looking at people and contestants in the audience, and she was like, I know that guy. I went to college with him. And, you know, he looks healthier and younger than ever. So she decided she wanted to go on The Biggest Loser. And she looked at this show as not entertainment, but inspiration. Now, we're circling back to Danny. Danny thought if he went on The Biggest Loser, then he wouldn't quit. You know, because millions of people would be watching him and, you know, there'd be cameras and other contestants. You know, he needs someone to hold him accountable. And he ended up having to make 3 different audition tapes before he was accepted. Like, he was very determined to be on The Biggest Loser. Flip back to Joelle. When Joelle wanted to sign up, her season required a partner to audition with. And she had, emphasis on had this friend named Carla Triplett. And they were a dynamic and beautiful and fun energy. So they ended up getting a hotel room and they ended up buying these like silver pants and like red bra, and they did this like really cute skit in this dance for their audition, and obviously they made it. And producers loved them because, you know, they had like a connection, but they would also like kind of like bicker at each other, like very sisterly. Now we meet Tracy Uchich, not pronouncing that right, season 8 contestant. Tracy grew up athletic, pretty normal looking, but she always felt different. She never knew how to eat right, and as she grew older, you know, as she became a wife and a mother, she started prioritizing her family over herself, and everything that she wanted or desired or, you know, just general care for herself took a backseat. And while she did struggle with body image, food, weight, etc., she never expressed negative self-talk out loud because she didn't want her 2 daughters to follow into her footsteps. You know, she started to see The Biggest Loser on TV, and she saw that they were having auditions in her area. So after church one day, she decided to go to the audition. And she said it was packed. You know, a bunch of people were there. It was raining, cats and dogs. And when she was waiting in line, a producer picked her out of line and dragged her inside to audition. Now we meet the host from season 4 to 16, who is Allison Sweeney. I don't really think I mentioned her that much in the summary. She's kind of just like, whatever, but I'll introduce you. Allison Sweeney was the host, and she's supposed to play this supportive role, almost like motivational, but also therapeutic, and she kind of had to like get the contestants to spill the beans. Fast forward, we see Joelle and Carla got accepted, we see that Tracy got accepted, and we see that Danny got accepted. And a lot of them said that this was like a very short turnaround, like they got accepted and they were gonna have to like hike it out of there within the next 72 hours. Actually, Tracy had to leave on Mother's Day, and she was so nervous about going on The Biggest Loser that she started to binge the night before. And when she got on the flight to get over to The Biggest Loser Ranch, she had to get a seatbelt extender on the plane. And she said that when she got there, everyone was like stuck in a hotel room for days, and it was very isolating. They ended up getting like all of their contracts, and, you know, it was like a huge stack of paper. And Tracy was like, you know, I'm not really like educated enough to be reading this, you know? So she goes up to one of the employees or producer and is like, I need an attorney to like help me read over this and make sure that I could sign this. The worker, producer, whatever was like, sure, we could do that, but we have 10 other people that want your spot. So she decided to just sign it and move on because obviously she didn't want to lose her spot in the show. Tracy said that she was thinking that being on The Biggest Loser would fix me, fix my marriage, make me a better mom or a better friend. And Tracy starts to talk about how weight has constantly held her down in life. And going on The Biggest Loser was almost like her last hope, or like her last chance to like redeem herself, or like just, she thought like The Biggest Loser would make her life do a 180. So we are hearing from Joelle. Joelle's family was very concerned about her going on the show, and low-key Joelle was too, and she was very nervous, but she was willing to take the risk. Joelle said that the first week they had to burn 6,000 calories a day. And, you know, I did a little research. This is what Google AI told me, so don't take this as fact. Take this as a grain of salt. It would take 20 hours of walking to burn 6,000 calories. But I mean, it might be easier to burn 6,000 calories if you're super morbidly obese, but it's still a lot. And during the beginning of the show, Joelle is like lifting weights or doing something, and she ends up like slipping and hurting her back. The trainers and the different staff members are telling her to walk it off, but she feels like she literally like can barely walk, and it's super painful. And they kept telling her that, you know, you're feeling this pain because you're not used to working out, and don't trust your body. Host Allison starts to talk about the different challenges, and the one that Allison is talking about is called the Temptation Challenge, which it's war crime material in my opinion. What they do is they have this Las Vegas size buffet in this one room, and people have to go in one by one, and they're in there 5 minutes at a time, and they have to decide how much they want to eat, and the person that eats the most calories gets to go home and like see their family. But the thing is, they still are going to be weighed at the end of the week. So whoever eats the most amount of calories wins, and they have like pizza, chocolate, you know, you name it, it's in there. So it's like a balance between wanting to see your family, so you want to eat, but then you still don't want to eat too much, so then you gain weight, you know what I mean? You know, it's some real psychological warfare. everyone might eat one piece of chocolate and hope like no one else eats anything, or someone might eat like a whole fucking extra large Domino's pizza, which is 3,000 calories, and win. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you must have to like think, is everyone going to eat a lot or a little? How much should I eat? Is it going to be enough to be the most amount of calories, but still enough to keep me in a deficit? You know, it's like the hamster wheel in your brain's like going 4,000 miles an hour. And I just think it's just diabolical. Then Bob gives his opinion on the challenges, and he said that's the stupidest fucking shit ever. And that was all the producers' idea. So now we have JD, the producer. I assume he's the one that came up with this challenge. He's the less sleazy of the producers. But here's how he justifies this challenge. You know, JD says temptation is just a part of life. David, the scummy producer, says, you know, this challenge was not right, but this is how it needed to be. It needed to be realistic to the rest of the world. You know, people go to restaurants and there's donuts in the break room. You know, we walk past the pantry in our kitchen all the time. We need to be able to avoid temptation, you know, have good self-discipline. So the scummy producer David's like, you know, kind of like sticking up for this temptation challenge. He's like, yeah, this is realistic, you know, like we have to avoid temptation and indulging all the time. It makes sense, like why this would be a challenge. And then resident fatty, professional fat ass Aubrey Gordon says, I've been a fat person forever, you know, and I've never been in a situation like this in my real life. Probably because she never restricts herself. Because she just inhales everything she sees. So Aubrey Gordon starts to talk about how having these unguarded buffets of food and using temptation wasn't accidental. She goes to say, quote, fat people can't be trusted around food. Thank you for completely missing the fucking point, Aubrey Gordon. I can always count on you to do that. Aubrey Gordon also says, quote, this was designed to make you draw conclusions about contestants, end quote. More salacious, the better. Oh, wow, this fat Piggly Wiggly had a Boston cream pie. He's so disgusting, even though the challenge is literally about going to see your family. Yeah, exactly, Aubrey Gordon. Thank you. So now we're seeing this, like, scene of Bob Harper and Jillian Michaels from season 7 when Joelle was on, and they're watching all the contestants in the gym from hidden cameras. And they tell... You probably couldn't have heard that, but someone is acting like this neighborhood's a fucking racetrack. So they tell Carla to get her ass on the parallel bars. And at the time, Carla was the biggest woman ever on the show. And of course, who the fuck knows how to use parallel bars besides gymnasts? So Carla just like kind of gets on these bars and is like lifting herself up and is like, she doesn't know what the fuck to do. She ends up falling and they had the camera like shake. And this was something very intentional they did all the time. Like, they'd be like this. If a fat person fell, like when Carla did, or when fat people walked, or, you know, they would act like an earthquake happened when someone would fall. And I guess this was happening all the time. This is something that Aubrey Gordon is very upset about. Of course, she made sure the producers of her documentary did not do that to her. The ground was very stable. The earth did not shake under her feet when she walked around the lake in her donut leggings. Joelle starts to talk about how Carla was set up for failure on the bars. Joelle also talks about how people like making fun of fat people. Joelle then, in that moment, finally started to understand what the biggest loser meant. She thought, are you trying to make fun of me? Are you trying to make me look like a loser? And then at that moment, she realized that the biggest loser was a double entendre. And she came to realize that all of this fat people comedic relief was just for good television. So now we're talking to Bob again, and Bob, he says, you know, remember, this show is for entertainment. We are trying to make sure that the show is entertaining because it was on primetime television. Bob said, obviously, you know, diet is the most important part when it comes to weight loss, but that's really boring television. Like, what do you want to just see a bunch of fat people meal prep and eat iceberg lettuce? No, that would be very boring TV. And, you know, since the show was kind of supposed to be inspirational, they had to go into the gym. The gym is where all the entertainment happened, so that's why there was so much yelling and screaming. And Bob says the producers ate it up. They loved the drama. Bob claims that the producers wanted to see contestants barf. They wanted to see the madness. They wanted to see fainting. It was insane shit. They wanted the TV show to be shocking. And then there's this clip, I can't remember if it was Bob or not, but he's like, I'm gonna fucking break your legs and then beat you with them. You know, I live for stuff like this. So now we meet Robert Huizinga, and he was the doctor on the show. He said the show was not pretty, but it was real as fuck. And he said that there is a 99.9% successful weight loss on the show. Dr. Robert Huizinga had a lot of qualms about the show. You know, when the show first began, the women were like 200 pounds, the men were around 300 pounds, but then the contestants just kept getting bigger and bigger and humongous. And it just became very hard for these humongous contestants to exercise. And it was actually very dangerous. Because if you did not know, being super morbidly obese is bad for you, your health, your joints, etc. Dr. Huizinga was upset during a lot of the show in the filming because he wasn't told a lot about the dangerous challenges. And he believes that you can't have a show based on weight loss that's safe. Now we're back to talking about season 8 with Tracy and Danny. So at the beginning of season 8, they were all dropped off at a beach. You know, when they got out of the bus, there was like so many different cameras, all the super crazy technology. You know, it felt like Hollywood. And it kind of like hit them with a ton of bricks at that moment. Like they're like, shit, this is like some real fancy TV. And their first kind of like challenge is that they have to jog a mile to the finish line, and if you get through the finish line, then like you're on the show. And most people are kind of like pacing themselves, doing a light jog, you know, because a lot of them know that they don't have any physical capabilities and they're not marathon runners. But Tracy was just running for the hills. Like she was in the lead for quite some time, you know, she was so motivated to like start running because she was so excited to be on the show and to like change her life. But then as time went on, her legs started to get weak and they felt really heavy. And then, you know, she was relatively close to the finish line, obviously not like super close, but she could like see the finish line. So then she like starts crawling and she's trying to cross the finish line. Basically, like everyone crosses the finish line, but like she's still over there looking like a little hermit crab or a big hermit crab in the sand. So Danny decides we need to be a team. And then everyone went out there and carried her to the finish line. And as soon as she passed that finish line, she fainted. A helicopter came to get her, and at that time, she saw her grandpa, she saw darkness, then lightness. She knew she had died that day. Then that ends episode 1. Episode 2. We are learning more about Dr. Huizinga. I guess he kind of like got famous because he was the doctor from the Raiders, and I guess he was also on the OJ trial. Let me look this up again so I can. He's kind of like a little bit of a celebrity doctor. Dr. Huizinga was an OJ defense witness in the 1997 trial, testifying that Simpson's significant physical limitations from years of football would have made carrying out the unalivings impossible. Huizinga examined Simpson and found him to have severe arthritis and restricted mobility in his joints, but he was unable to run or jog due to these conditions, in case we have some true crime junkies out there. Dr. Huizinga has always been super athletic, and he was in wrestling all throughout college. Obviously, he went to med school, and one day he ended up getting an interview to be the doctor for the Raiders, because they were moving to LA and they needed a new doctor. And the coach was like, have you ever played injured? And he's like, yeah, of course. And he was hired by the captain of the Raiders because he wanted a doctor that understood what pro athletes went through. After his time like with the Raiders, he ended up writing this book and it ended up being the inspiration to the book Any Given Sunday. And, you know, after all of this time, that's when Dr. Huizinga became a very well-known doctor. And then he was even on Us Today with Charlie Sheen, because I guess he was Charlie Sheen's doctor. I don't know. Sometimes, like, I feel like Dr. Huizinga is, like, a good guy, but then I hear this shit, and I'm like, starting to get a little weary. So one day, a friend calls Dr. Huizinga and is like, you know, how much weight could an overweight person lose in a week and have, like, a really good transformation? And Dr. Huizinga says, you know, like, 3 to 4 pounds a week would be pretty easily done if they had like a good routine with diet and exercise. But exercising is more for like excitement. You know, like the food is like the most important thing. But then Dr. Huizinga starts to talk about how when he was with the Raiders, he had this problem with their 400-pound linemen, and they would just lose their appetite from extreme workouts. And it would low-key kind of be hard for them to eat sometimes. So they forced those linemen to have all-you-can-eat meals, but even during those times, they still started losing weight. And, you know, this scenario kind of like stayed in Dr. Huizinga's mind. And he was starting to think, you know, does exercise really do something? You know, there has to be more to this exercise thing than we're giving credit to. And Dr. Huizinga, you know, starts to come to the conclusion that exercise causes decreased appetite. All of his experience with the Raiders kind of like shaped and influenced the Biggest Loser show. He wanted to see if fat people could work out with the same intensity as pro athletes, but obviously like not the same ability. Now we're back to Tracy and Danny. You know, Tracy is in the hospital. She says that her organs are literally shutting down, and she has, all right, I'm not going to be able to say this, rhabdomyolysis. It's on the screen, so you can read it. Her body was literally shutting down. First her liver, to kidney, to heart, and she almost died. And when she was in the hospital, she had so much fluid retention in her legs. The doctor says that if they're not going to be able to drain themselves, then they're literally going to cut her legs open to drain them. At this time, she was just so weak, and she couldn't even, like, get up to use the bathroom by herself. And when Dr. Huizinga heard about this, he rushed to see her, and Dr. Huizinga was really, like, the only person to acknowledge how sick she was. Dr. Huizinga wanted her to go home so bad, but she wanted to stay. Tracy said she felt weak. She felt meek. She said at this time she wasn't really loving life. She had a loveless marriage. Her husband was cheating on her. She felt like her husband's infidelity was because she was fat. She just wanted to change so she could have her best life. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to be disrespected or yelled at anymore. She didn't want to be told what she could and could not do. She didn't want to be harmed anymore. She didn't want to be abused. And Biggest Loser was like a second chance at life. She felt that she cheated death and needed to be on the show. So we're back to Dr. Huizinga, and he's like low-key, like kind of trembling and like very upset when he said this. And he said he felt like the contestants were his kids. It made him very upset that the show didn't tell him about challenges. He should have been there during every challenge, and then it shows clips of like people getting injured doing insane shit. Now we're back to Danny. Danny says that he was scared to see Tracy in the helicopter, but everyone was excited to see her back on the Biggest Loser ranch. And Danny says that, you know, going to the Biggest Loser ranch was like a golden ticket to only focus on weight loss. You know, it's kind of like rehab. When you go to rehab, all you're focusing on is like getting sober or like trying to fix whatever you're working on. You know, there is no responsibility besides like trying to lose weight when you're on the Biggest Loser. That's the only thing you have to focus on. You have to worry about bills or jobs or work or family. You're just there to lose weight. Danny didn't want to give up because the world was watching. He could not mess this up. You know, during the competition, everyone was living day to day. So we have the first weigh-in now. I think there's like mini teams on the Biggest Loser. So he was partnered up with this girl named Liz. During the first week, Danny lost 24 pounds. Liz lost 10. The second week, Danny lost 12 pounds. Liz lost 10. And then the third week, he only lost 4 pounds. So then Danny's like, shit, like I need to change. Like I'm not doing something right. So he started eating 800 calories a day. And then the next week when he got weighed, he lost 15 pounds. And he really felt tempted to be this extreme because he wanted to win and get that money. Dr. Huizinga advised people how to lose weight healthily, but the contestants were hearing information elsewhere. Like the doctor told the women that they should eat 1,200 calories a day, and the men could have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 calories. But the trainers were the ones that were telling them to eat 800 calories a day. Dr. Huizinga got so upset about this. He's like, I am going to quit if you do not let me talk to the trainers. So he would always give lectures to the trainers, but not really much would change. Especially Julian. Like, Dr. Huizinga said that Julia Michaels, like, basically was uninterested every time they had a talk. Now we get to see Bob again. Bob says that a lot of doctors have a God complex, and Dr. Huizinga had one as well. Bob said, no one is going to tell us what to do with our meal plan or exercise plans. Danny talks about how he would exercise 4 to 8 hours a day. And at some point, Danny was given stackers, and I looked those up online. Those are gas station caffeine pills. And he said working out and like all this caffeine and shit was hell on the body, obviously, because he was 430 pounds. I ended up looking them up because I've never heard of these before. And the stackers have anywhere from 250 to 400 milligrams of caffeine per pill. And you're giving this to a 400-pound man. You're asking him to have a fucking heart attack. And Danny ended up having one a day as it was approved by the trainers, not the doctor. Dr. Huizinga banned coffee because people were abusing it on the show. And, everyone signed off on these rules. But if you did elsewise, that was on you if the trainers told you to do anything else. Even though having caffeine was technically against the rules. Danny, the producer, the sleazebag one, never thought Jillian Michaels wanted to hurt the contestants because he knew she had a good heart. Like, he knew what was inside her. And being hard was just her style. Then it shows people barfing and Jillian Michaels, like, screaming at them. Jillian Michaels would scream at you super personal, then celebrate with the contestants because she knew they had it in them. Like, Jillian Michaels would be like, "You're a fat, nasty fuck. This is why your wife cheated on you and why your kids hate you. Because you're so fat and lazy and you never do anything. You're a fucking loser. You're never going to do anything with your life. Everyone's going to run away from you and you're going to die alone." And then, they would push through that exercise and they'd be like, and then she's like, "Yeah, I told you had it in you. Good job." So this is Aubrey Gordon, like, kind of referencing the trainers. She says, "Once you're fat, I'm allowed to treat you however I see fit." So it's okay to abuse fat people. So Dr. Huizinga did not approve Tracy to work out with Julian and Bob for quite a while. And she really trusted the doctor because she knew he had her best interest at heart. And this made a lot of people upset. They thought like she didn't want weight loss enough. And, since Tracy wasn't allowed to exercise, she thought, I need to be entertaining. I need to do something to stay on the show, whatever it takes. So from episode or week 1 to 7, there is so much drama because of Tracy. Everyone basically hates Tracy. And she didn't understand why until the show aired. Tracy said that everyone had it out for her, and even at times, the coaches didn't want to clap for her. They showed this one clip, and Tracy lost 11 pounds in a week. No one clapped for her, even though that's an amazing accomplishment. But Tracy knew she had to do some crazy shit because she could not go home the way she was yet. And then we have Aubrey Gordon saying, "Fat people are either ignored or stared at. We are never a person, just a body." Because Tracy was ignored because no one clapped for her, even though no one liked her, which I'm not saying was the right thing to do, but everyone was pissed off at her. So now we meet Olivia Ward, who is the season 11 winner. She says that in 5th grade, she knew that she looked a little different. She grew up loving opera. She's very talented. She's like a little theater girl. She's very, very talented. She's in that field of work. And as an adult, she was trying out for different roles. This one producer or something contacted her and was like, "You have an amazing voice. You are so talented. You are beautiful, but you're just in the wrong body. I want to hire you, but can you be a size 8 in 2 years when the show goes into production?" And Olivia thought to herself, "I will do whatever it takes." And then we meet Hannah, who is Olivia's little sister, and she was the runner-up on season 11. Hannah grew up very active. She played volleyball all throughout college, but one day she fell down the stairs, and then her whole life changed. Being an athlete was her whole life. It was her personality. It was what she thought her value was. And after she had surgery from her injury, she said she put on 100 pounds in a year. Her world was completely upside down. After she gained weight, she says that no one would hold doors for her. No one wanted to talk to her. And people really treated her different. She ended up even calling her sister asking, "Why didn't you tell me that, overweight people are just treated so differently?" She stopped dating for 10 years. She thought, who's going to want to marry me? Olivia called and told Hannah to come up to her apartment or to her house, drive on over, because she wants to audition for The Biggest Loser. And Hannah was like, low-key pissed, so she hung up. And then Olivia called again and was like, hey, bitch, I know you're sitting your fat ass down on the couch eating a pot pie and your greasy, nasty, stained moo-moo. We are trying out for The Biggest Loser together. They get to auditions and someone's interviewing them and they say, thousands of people are here. Why should we choose you? You only need to lose like 80 to 100 pounds. And then Olivia said, well, like 95% of obese people in the US only need to lose that same amount of weight. We represent the watchers, which is true. There is more obese people than like the next class up of super morbidly obese people. Hannah starts to talk about how she had a broken metabolism when she went on the show. She had a 55% body fat, no muscle. And, she was really kind of embarrassed to low-key, like, be on the show and go up on the scale and stuff. But Julia Michaels was talking to her and she's like, everyone knows you're fucking fat under that shirt. Like, we know that you don't look like a movie star. Don't be embarrassed. And Julia Michaels says something along the lines like, you're not a fat person. This is just your circumstance. You're moving on. Which I low-key, while it was like kind of harsh, I thought that was kind of nice. And I think we should think about that too. Like, not to identify with being a fat person, just knowing like this is like the circumstances that you're in now and won't be forever. I like some of the things that Julia Michaels says. But if she said them to me, then I'd probably fucking leap off a bridge. When Olivia was on the show, she always talked about how she can't get pregnant because of her weight. I assume she has PCOS. She talks a lot about kids and, she's been married 13 years and she's 34 years old and I want kids. Her biological clock is ticking. Like, that was Olivia's main motivation to lose weight, is because she wanted to have children. So then there's clips of the coaches being actually really nice to the different contestants, like being proud of them and being like, I know that you could do this. Like, you have it in you. Like, I'm so proud of you. Keep going. Like, you're going to be successful. I forget who it was, but like Bob was talking and hugging on one of the girls and is like, whoever you marry is going to be like the luckiest man alive. Like, you are beautiful and you are hardworking, like, being really sweet. Then Aubrey Gordon starts bitching about how the coaches weren't qualified to be doing any of these things and there is no therapist on set. But hi, this is a game show, not rehab. Back to Joelle. And Joelle also starts to talk about how the coaches are pseudo-therapists and not qualified to be doing anything, and claims that they're very reckless. Joelle said that she had a lot of personal problems while she was on the show. She cried a lot. She did a lot of talking and did not work out that much. Now we have Bob on the screen. Bob says that Joelle was very difficult. He wanted to help Joelle so bad. He spent extra time with Joelle. He was really trying to get to know her and spend time with her because he wanted to see her succeed. But like, it seemed like Bob like really had a hard time like feeling her out. Joelle claims that she had bruising from working out and at time felt too tired to be here and low-key wanted to quit. And now we have this one scenario on the screen. This is where hell breaks loose. So one night, it's the end of the night, we're all done working out for the day. And at the end of every night or workout, Bob wants everyone to do like a little 30-second jog or run to kind of like end the workout sesh. So everyone is on treadmills right next to each other and all they have to do is run for 30 seconds. Everyone is doing it. They're doing it well. This is something that they all do on a very regular basis. And Joelle is just... she can't do it. She's not doing it. She's giving like 4% effort. Joelle claims that Bob starts berating her, and during this time she went out of body. Joelle says that she didn't trust the trainers, and she withheld energy from everyone so she can kind of like conserve herself. You see everyone jogging on these treadmills and everyone's fucking super morbidly obese. Obviously, everyone's 300, 400 pounds doing their thing. And Joelle's like the only one that's not doing it. And Bob's like, come on, Joelle. Come on, Joelle. We need to do this for 30 seconds. This is the last thing we have to do of the night. Come on, you got this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And she's just literally like walking, like can't doing it. And, they're just going back and forth. And this is the camel that broke the straw's back. They're like going back and forth at each other. And Bob's like, just shut the fuck up and do it. And Bob's kind of like, all you do is talk, 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 Joelle. Bob says he's like so pissed off because Joelle like literally can't commit to anything and won't finish. And then Bob ends up saying like he's not very proud of this moment. And Julian says that he's never seen Bob that mad before. Joelle says, no one should ever be abused like that. During that time, Joelle was so embarrassed. Now she's crying when they're talking to her again. She said during that time she felt very triggered because it felt like she was at home again and she just wanted to eat and cope. So it seemed like something kind of like, I think the yelling triggered some sort of trauma. And then she says, fuck you, Bob Harper, and your little dog too. So now we see clips of Joelle and Carla being weighed. And Joelle and Carla are like literally always at the bottom of every single week because Joelle never loses any weight. The first week, Joelle lost no weight. Carla lost 9. And then there's like a clip of Carla from the show and she's like, here's another example of her letting me down. Bob starts to talk about Carla. He said, I really liked Carla. Carla and Joelle kind of like fought a lot. Joelle claims that Carla also berated her too. And they had a fallout during their time on the show. And Joelle said it kind of like felt like a divorce. Everyone picked a different side of who they were going to support, and like literally everyone supported Carla, probably because Carla was actually fucking losing weight and trying. And after all this happened, Joelle was ridiculed by everyone in the group. Like they were all sitting down and talking. This was like before people were going to be eliminated, so they're kind of like, girl, explain yourself. Why are you like this? Why are you not losing weight? Why are you not trying? And she like really like couldn't give a fucking answer. So then her and Carla ended up getting voted out. Joelle said she joined for her health, not to be on TV. Joelle said that they casted her for her personality and she wished she would have spoke up for herself. And then Joelle thinks that they wanted her to play the stereotypical angry black female character on the show. Then we have Tracy. She gets voted out because she had the lowest weight loss percentage. She made it like 8 episodes and she left being 194 pounds. I'm not sure how much she lost. I'll have to put that on the screen. I don't think they said what she started as. When most people go home from The Biggest Loser, they like leave in a limo and drive them home. But when it was time for Tracy to leave, she walks out and there's a fucking helicopter waiting for her. And she said she barfed. And she just started to have like flashbacks of her time at the beach. While she was there, she knew her marriage was over. And, when she finally got back home, they like took a family photo and they did a little reunion. And she says that was the last photo of their family together. She thought if she lost weight, then it would fix her marriage. But Biggest Loser gave her the strength to push through. Back to season 11 with Olivia and Hannah. So Hannah started at 248 and ended at 128 pounds. So she lost 120 pounds total. And her sister Olivia, who obviously won, she started at 261, ended at 132. So she lost 129. After this season, they were the first non-celebrities to be featured on Fitness Magazine. They were on Dr. Drew. They were on a bunch of different shows. And during this time, the seasons always had to be bigger and better than the other ones. They had I don't know if it was this full season or if it was just like a few episodes where they had children. They started having global spin-offs. And they started actually doing licensing deals. And this started to bring in billions of dollars. Like they had different weights, cookbooks, Wii games, you name it. During this time, obviously, they're exploding in popularity. Now they're starting to get heat. And a article from Your Fat Friend is on the screen. Then we also have articles from Variety. And they really felt like The Biggest Loser was starting to be looked at under a microscope. And then we have the sleazy producer, David, tell me another show that changes people's life like The Biggest Loser. Nothing, because it's the best show ever. Now we meet Suzanne Mendoza, and low-key she's giving Real Housewives energy. They sit her down to interview and she's like, am I gonna get sued again? She says that people really drank the Kool-Aid when it came to The Biggest Loser. Suzanne really thought the show would change her life, but really she thinks the show exploits people's health to make billions of dollars. And she was sued for speaking out. And that's the end of episode 2, and we will learn more about what quote-unquote speaking out was. Start of episode 3. We see Suzanne's audition tape, and she was dancing to Baby Got Back. And then she was also, like, in the street in a bikini, being like, I'm gonna do anything to be on Biggest Loser. So we get a little background about Suzanne's life. She was a cop in the early 2000s. She worked on Ground Zero. And during this time, no one wanted to work with her because she was a woman. Actually, no one wanted to work with women, according to her. And she was treated very horribly at work. And during this time, they're showing pictures of her, like, when she was working. And, you know, she's pretty chunky during this time. Definitely overweight. And one day when she was working, she got into a super bad car accident. And she was ejected from the cop car. She got a concussion, she broke an arm, and she had a severe back injury. She states she's always struggled with her weight, but it started soaring out of control after the accident. And she thought the show would help her. So, you know, she was talking to the producers before the show started. She's like, you know, I'm so excited to be on the show. You know, I started losing weight and started doing healthy things, you know, to prepare to be on the show. And the producer's like, girl, stop. Actually, you should put on more weight before you get here so you can, like, be as fat as possible. Suzanne says that they're selling TV, not health. And she says, why did no one tell me that this show could have ruined my life? So now we're back to Tracy. One day Tracy gets a call from producers and they're like, you know, you should be positive. You know, you should have a good outlook on your experience. And then she ends up going on Jay Leno, our Crimson Chin. Jay Leno starts reading emails that was sent to him, as well as, like, different Facebook posts. And someone's like, Tracy, I hate you so fucking much. If I saw you crossing the road, I would speed up and hit you. You are evil. You are probably a horrible mother. I hate your guts. You are psycho. I wish you would have died that day on Biggest Loser. She was getting a lot of hate mail, even sent to her house. Now we're introduced to Jennifer Carey. She's an obesity physician, and she was actually on one of the seasons of Biggest Loser. She wishes that people would see being overweight as a medical condition. She talks about how when she was in med school, it was really hard for everyone, obviously, because med school is very difficult, but it was extra hard for her because she felt like she had to work through the stigma of being fat. You know, at one time she was 300 pounds while in med school. She talks about this one sex lesson they had at med school, and it was so fucking weird. Like, it's, to be honest, giving pervert. Let me know if you guys are doctors and if you had a sex lesson. So during this sex lesson, they showed a bunch of different types of sex. So they had, like, a heterosexual couple having sex. Then they watched a homosexual couple have sex. Oh, they watched, like, people in wheelchairs have sex. And then they ended up watching, like, super morbidly obese people having sex. And obviously it's dark, the lights are off, so they can watch everything on the projection. And there was a super athletic kid sitting in front of Jennifer, and he looks to his friend when the two fat people are having sex, and he's like, ugh, this is so fucking gross, this is disgusting. At this time, Jennifer thought to herself, like, I can't do this anymore. She's, like, sitting in this seat in the, like, the lecture hall, all squeezed in because she's so fat. And she's like, you know, my fellow peer didn't know that I was sitting behind him, so he didn't say this on purpose. And it's like, oh wow, this is what he really thinks of fat people. He thinks they're, like, fucking disgusting and repulsing. So she decided she was going to make a change. In 2006, she ended up replying to a casting call for The Biggest Loser. And when she was there, she lost 110 pounds. She reached her goal. She was successful on the show. I can't remember if it was when the show finished or when she just, like, ended up getting eliminated. She ended up getting a job with Dr. Huizenga on the show. And she talks about how there was just so much tension between Dr. Huizenga and the producers. Dr. Jennifer Carey thinks that the show enforced fat stereotypes, and she thought the show was very offensive for fat people, like during the challenges where they had to run around with food in their mouth. She says it's not healthy for people to vomit while exercising, but people were so desperate to be on the show and they wanted weight loss so bad that they ended up doing it anyway. Back to Danny on season 8. Woo! Yes, dog. What, are you bored of hearing me talk? I've only talked for an hour and a half. Come here. Okay. Do you want me to hold you or not? In case you haven't seen my other videos, my husband and I rescued a dog. This is Sochi. Say hi to Sochi, our skinny legend dog. Please don't lick me. I'm trying to get rid of the acne and the rashes you give me. Sochi's only 10 pounds. She has nothing to say. I guess she can sit in my arms. Sochi can't relate to being fat, but she has empathy for us, right? She has empathy for us fatties, right? Sochi has also never watched The Biggest Loser because she was born last year. Good for you. But she was watching 101 Dalmatians last night, and she loved that. So back to Danny. He's talking about how 10 million people watched his finale, and at that time, he was the biggest transformation in Biggest Loser history. He lost 239 pounds, and obviously he won that $250,000. And, he went on a little press tour after. He was on the Today Show, or he was on, was it Dr. Oz, I think? I don't know, he was on some fucking doctor show. He talked about how he ended up getting free skin removal surgery from being on that doctor show, and he actually said that, at the beginning of the show, they ended up taking off their shirts for weigh-ins, to show how fat they were, but over time they had to start wearing compression, and they put their shirts back on at the end of the season because they had just had so much loose skin, and they thought it would be unattractive to the viewers. And Danny says that he kept the weight off for a while. While he's talking about this, they show a clip, and it says loseyourquit.com. So I'm not sure if that was his business in the past or something. Like if he was a coach or I don't know. Danny thought he had it all figured out. So they show a clip of him from 2016, which is 7 years after he won. He ends up weighing himself, and he is now 340 pounds. And that means he gained 149 pounds since winning and being on The Biggest Loser. When he won The Biggest Loser, he was 191. He's talking about, before I weighed myself, I thought it'd be around 300 pounds. Yeah, I didn't think I gained this much weight, but, I haven't really been tracking anything or, really keeping an eye on my diet. And he says at this time he's now less than 100 pounds away from his highest when he was on The Biggest Loser. He says, people in the seasons before me were gaining their weight back. I knew something was going on. Yeah, you guys all have fucking EDs, that's what. Then they show a article from the New York Post, and it says, I won't be a victim to this. It's the hand I've been dealt. And it's some interview that they did with Danny. Then some researchers did a study about people from season 8. There were 16 contestants, but they ended up just doing the study on 14 of them. So 14 out of the 16 contestants from season 8 of The Biggest Loser, all but one gained their weight back. It's almost like they had issues with food that they didn't resolve. Interesting. And 4 people actually are heavier now than they were when they were on the show. Suzanne said that she read the article when it came out, and she said it made sense. People love to watch The Biggest Loser show, but not to keep up with us afterwards. Danny says something along the lines of, when he first lost weight, he had a normal metabolism for his size, but years after, as he continued to gain weight, his metabolism continued to slow down. And Danny says something like, my metabolism is so slow, I'm supposed to eat 600 to 800 calories less than someone that is my size. Danny's like, what am I supposed to do? Skip breakfast or something? Danny, respectfully, you can skip breakfast. You have enough breakfast on you for years and years and years. Now we're back to Dr. Huizinga, and he said he was devastated when all these different articles came out claiming that The Biggest Loser wrecks people's metabolism. Then we have a reporter from The New Yorker. His name is Dr. I don't know if he even said his name, so I'm going to butcher this. 𝒹𝒾𝓈𝓸𝓸? Whatever. He's on the screen. You can see him. So this doctor says that people that were on The Biggest Loser had a lower resting metabolism rate than other people their weight. But he goes to talk about how the study was only done on 14 people, but it was a strong study. Then he also talks about how most studies have somewhere from 100 to 1,000 different participants, and how during the study there was actually no control group. So they don't know for sure if, what would happen to people if they weren't on the show. So it's really hard to draw a conclusion from the study just because there's no control group, and the study was done on such a small population. But we could take it as a precautionary tale to not do super extreme diets. Then we start to hear from Tracy again, and Tracy says she doesn't agree with the article. She blames obesity for people's bad metabolism, and people should kind of take the responsibility of their bad metabolism because they didn't take good care of themselves. Ryan says he can blame his metabolism for gaining weight, but he knows that he is the one that is responsible for putting the food in his body. Ryan says that he yo-yo dieted and like fluctuated with his weight so much his whole life, so that probably messed with his metabolism before, and it can't like be the show's full responsibility. Ryan says the show was fun, but not sure if it was really for him. Ryan says he has like PTSD from the show and he feels really guilty after gaining the weight back. You know, this was a really great opportunity for him. And, you know, he starts kind of like crying now and he's asking himself, was I a failure? Then he says something like, everyone constantly is questioning life, asking themselves where they can do better. Now we're back to Danny. It is 2018, which is 9 years after he was on the show. And he weighed himself and he's now a few pounds shy at his show weight. While he's talking about this, it's showing like all of his different memorabilia from when he was on the show. Then he says, quote, "The shame that you feel being a failure after being a success is a hard load to bear," end quote. Now we're back to Bob and he says, losing weight is easy. Keeping it off is hard. If you struggle with weight, then you are never going to get that monkey off your back. That monkey is a part of you for the rest of your life. Then we're back to Suzanne and she claims that she gained 20 pounds immediately after getting off the show, literally from like her plane ride home. She said she gained all the weight back after the show because she was starving herself. When she got home from the show, she slept for 2 days straight. On the third day, she started running 10 miles a day and exercise became all-consuming to her. She claims she became a different person after the show, financially, emotionally, physically, mentally, and she came back from the show with an ED. Because of her ED, she started to avoid social situations. She felt constantly judged for her weight and often skipped eating. You know, after the show, obviously she went back to work and she was in the academy classes and she often got targeted for her weight because of the show. She said in her class there was 220 men and she was the only woman, and she would often get told to weigh in front of the class, in front of everyone, and she was the only one that had to weigh in front of people. And her sergeant or like boss or whatever like told her to her face in front of everyone that she has a weight issue. Now we're back to Dr. Jennifer. She says, you know, the lifestyle that people in The Biggest Loser have is not realistic to continue after leaving the show because, you know, they're not getting paid to work like professional athletes. You know, people still have to go to work. You know, they have jobs, they have families and stuff. They can't be working out 24 hours a day. You're talking about how the show is unrealistic, hard to keep up with after you leave. Danny said one day he called the producers pleading for help, asking for some sort of aftercare program for people that were on the show. You know, Danny says, like, the show just makes so much money that they easily could set aside some money for therapy, you know, for people to have gym membership after they leave the show, or just, like, some sort of recovery program. But he said no one helped. Danny says it's a shame that no money is set aside for aftercare for the 300 to 400 people that were on the show. More people would have been successful in the long run with that help. We have David, the producer. He's like, yeah, it would have been nice and cool to have like some sort of help after, but we're not made of money here. We can't just be begging NBC for some sort of aftercare program. Joelle claims that she tried to build a relationship with producers after the show, and she actually ended up emailing them for help because she had an injury on the show, but said she was ignored. And like when they show this, they have like these little fake emails for like graphics. It says like positivetransformation.com or something. So I'm like, I wonder if Joelle also has some sort of coaching business. David claims that Joelle never reached out to him, but if she wanted to now, she is more than welcome. Joelle said she felt very silenced when she was on the show and afterwards. So in 2016, Joelle and Suzanne reached out to different media organizations and ended up speaking with the New York Post in 2016 because they thought, you know, these producers made so much goddamn money off of us. You know, it's time for us to profit. And then there's clips of Suzanne on like Insider, and it shows her crying watching old clips of herself on the TV show. Suzanne says that The Biggest Loser was the biggest mistake of her life. And then an article comes out saying that, people on The Biggest Loser were on very unhealthy diets and they were told to eat 800 calories a day. In the same article, it said that Bob's assistant gave Adderall and Yellow Jacket caffeine pills to Joelle. Joelle claimed to tell the producers and medical team about, being given these pills, but Dr. Huizenga denies being told about these pills, and Bob claims that he did not give pills to anyone. Bob says he's very proud of what he did on the show. Dr. Huizenga feels like the New York Post took advantage of contestants who were freaked out about the most recent article talking about the metabolism and basically said it was a bunch of fake news. Joelle said that the article was taken out of context and was more salacious than she expected. She didn't think she'd be the cover, and she felt like the imaging was they drugged me. And she thought it was very clickbaity, and they focused more on the super bad stuff than kind of her general experience. David, the producer, claims he did not know anything about drugs. He was unaware of this, blah, 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 trying to cover his ass. Dr. Huizenga says that after this article came out, a reporter gave LAPD a huge tip that illegal drugs were being used on The Biggest Loser. So then they ended up having to follow up and investigate everything. So the police start examining the show for narcotics. Bob is talking again, and Bob says, NBC brings him to their office, and they're like, we got your back. Don't worry about anything. We're not going to let anything happen to you. And Bob's like, well, you don't really need to get me. I didn't do anything wrong. And then he says something like, when you're successful, people come for you hard, they're trying to take you down. Then more articles are on the screen, and it says is The Biggest Loser too extreme? Is The Biggest Loser a broken fairy tale? And now we have my best friend Aubrey Gordon on screen, and she says, it doesn't feel like an accident that people are getting the memo that your job is to get as thin as possible at any cost, and it surprised me how many people were surprised. And then there's a clip of Jillian Michaels, and it's when everyone's being weighed, they're talking about the caffeine pills. Jillian's I stand by my opinion, caffeine pills are healthier and a better option than having unlimited coffee. It seems like Jillian's team were the ones taking the caffeine pills, or maybe it was, I don't fucking know. But because of whatever happened with the caffeine pills, Jillian's team ended up having a 4-pound punishment added to their total weight loss, so they probably lost for the week. And JD, the nicer producer, ended up leaving by season 12, so he didn't know much about the situation with the caffeine pills, because I guess that happened later on. David, the sleazy producer, is talking. He said, well, nothing that they had was illegal. They weren't doing steroids, they weren't doing drugs. Technically, caffeine was banned on the show, and Dr. Huizenga actually didn't want contestants to have caffeine at all, but nothing was illegal. Might have been wrong, but not illegal. Now we have Dr. D. I'm just calling it Dr. D. Dr. D says caffeine, technically is a drug, and it's the most common drug, and it can be extremely dangerous when used to suppress appetite or to lose weight. And caffeine puts a lot of stress on the cardiovascular system. Dr. Jennifer says caffeine is easier to OD on when using pills. Looked it up, and it says 400 milligrams is the cap of what a healthy adult should have. And they said that, ODing on caffeine can result to a heart attack or stroke. They said technically, yeah, caffeine was against the rules and no one was supposed to have it, but, it is what it is. And they also stated that no one got in trouble for distributing drugs. No one got in trouble for distributing drugs. So no one got arrested on The Biggest Loser. Dr. H said that Julian never took any interest in his advice. He said that Jillian Michaels was street smart, but had no practical knowledge of medication, and she would do a lot to win. The Biggest Loser has obviously been through some shit at this time, but it all came crumbling down when the winner of season 15 came on stage. Her name is Rachel Fredrickson, and, she was a national level swimmer when she was on the show. She was 23 years old. And, this was a big season. This was very important, The sisters, Olivia and Hannah, came on the show. They're kind of doing a little bit of hosting, announcing. Several other winners came to the finale. Bob said that when him and Jillian's saw Rachel walk out on the screen, they were both horrified because Rachel lost so much weight. Aubrey Gordon claims people said Rachel took this weight loss too far and not as someone who took the intended message to the show to heart. So Aubrey Gordon is blaming the show rather than giving Rachel any sort of agency or not letting Rachel take any blame for her unhealthy habits. You know, people were outraged when they saw Rachel on stage. They went to social media saying, sad little girls are watching this on TV, even though the show is rated PG, which means suitable for a general audience, but parents should want to review the show before kids watch it. Technically, the show is PG, which means that there was censored swearing, violence, suggestive dialogue, which means kids shouldn't be fucking watching the show anyway. Shut up about the kids. How about you talk about the fucking parents? How about that? So there ends up being this clip of Julian on Thomas Delores' podcast. I don't know who that is. Jillian didn't want to go on the show, so they're just using this little clip of her. And Jillian saying, they're talking about Rachel, and she says, unhealthily, to say the least. Personally, I wouldn't have let this happen, but I profited off the platform that did. I am complicit, and at that point, I knew I needed to leave the show, which was season 15. David, the producer, said Julian was right, but, you know, we tried our best. You know, we try to make sure everyone is safe and healthy and whatever, blah, 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 pretending to actually care about people. But, you know, the whole cast of the show and the crew were still really shocked. So after this came out, just more criticism came piling on, and NBC no longer wanted to touch the show because there was just so much heat and criticism because of The Biggest Loser. And also during this time, like 2016 era, you know, the culture in America started to change. This is when body positivity slowly started to rise into popularity. And then we have the host talking, and she said, I understand the critique about the show, and she doesn't wear rose-tinted glasses. Like, obviously, she can see the problems with The Biggest Loser, but she just wanted to talk about health and weight loss. Bob talks about how he thinks the show is trying to shed a light on the obesity epidemic. He said this was very sad, but he knew the show needed to come to an end. The show has ended. It is February 2017. And Bob Harper ends up having a heart attack. It is so severe, he's left unconscious for 2 days, and the only reason that he's not dead is because when he, collapsed at the gym, there was a doctor working there, and he was able to, pound on his heart and give him CPR, so he was able to, keep him alive until an ambulance came. He's obviously so upset when he's talking about this, and he said he never related more to the contestants on The Biggest Loser now because now he has to heavily monitor his food, exercise, etc. And then we have a clip of Aubrey Gordon. So you can't screenshot things on Netflix, but I recorded my screen while watching Netflix with my phone, so you guys could see this clip. I mean, I've really never liked Aubrey Gordon, but when I saw her say this, I was like, girl, you're low-key fucking evil. You are an evil woman.
Thank God that I'm still here. It sort of punctures one of the main arguments of the show. If you're fat, you're going to die. And if you exercise correctly, as determined by Bob and Jillian, all of these health outcomes will be warded off.
And I don't know if they just edited that so horribly or if Aubrey Gordon is literally just that wicked. But technically, the heart attack that Bob Harper had nothing to do with exercise or health. Actually, just being in such great shape helped him so much. If he was Aubrey Gordon size and he had that heart attack, he probably would have been dead. Because Bob Harper has a super rare medical condition. This article says Bob discovered that he has his familiar hypocholesterolema that led to a hereditary condition which causes high levels of LDL cholesterol and increases the risk of heart attacks and stroke. Despite being in excellent health and living a fit lifestyle, the hereditary nature of his condition increased his risk for arterial blockages and heart attacks. So what Aubrey Gordon says, besides... Thank you, Sochi, for the entertaining sideshow. So it's if he wasn't in good shape, then Bob Harper literally would have died. His lifestyle did not create the heart attack like most obese Americans that die of heart disease. Aubrey Gordon, like, really thought she did something. This is disgusting. It shows a clip of Bob on Andy Cohen, and he says that he heard from almost everyone on the TV show after his heart attack, except for one person. And people are shocked that Bob and Jillian aren't, like, really good friends, but he claims that they were just close on TV, and he never heard from her after the heart attack. Joelle says the idea of the show is better than the actual show. It needs some tweaks to actually help people. JD, the producer, says, this is the first game show to hold people accountable and to give people such an amazing opportunity. It's super emotional that we have Dr. H, and he said that the show gave him so much satisfaction, and he stayed on the show and hopes to continue to help people. Dr. H says that him and Tracy are actually really good friends, and they just did a marathon together. So now we're seeing Tracy again. Tracy said she went from doing Weight Watchers at 10 years old with her grandma, and she used to be a woman that always talked down about herself, and sometimes she still does that, and she says she'll never look like what she did at the Biggest Losers finale, but she's proud of where she is today. Dr. D says, if there was a show like this nowadays, it would be just people injecting themselves with Ozempic and not doing weight lossy things. Danny says he looks at Jillian Michaels' social media every once in a while, and he really agrees with what she says. Jillian Michaels says that Ozempic is just another yo-yo diet on crack. Danny says he doesn't feel at peace with using it. Bitch, like, you're literally 400 pounds. Is it safer to take Ozempic or to continue to live the way you are? Reconsider. Suzanne says that she's on Ozempic, and she says most people don't like it, but it's helping her live a healthier heart lifestyle. Joelle says she's also on it, and she says it's a great intervention. Dr. Huizinga thinks that people use it as a miracle pill, like fen-phen and other sort of medications. He doesn't know what the side effects for that medication will be yet. David, the producer, says, remember, I was sad when I saw that bulletin board, and, if we did the show again today, I would have the balls to not put a cash prize for the winner and fight like hell to give no money because there is no price tag on saving people's life. Why? Because you want that money? JD says that Biggest Loser changed the culture around weight loss and how people talked about food and exercise, but he would 100% change things about the show, especially like the challenges. Joelle thinks that Biggest Loser doesn't understand weight loss. She thinks weight loss is the success and the failures, not just about how quickly you can lose weight, but staying on the right course. So now they're back to Danny. And the interviewers are like, what's next? Danny starts to say, like, I have a great life, but, he needs to start putting him and his wife first. They're not getting any younger and they're obese. And they need to lose weight for the right reason. Not for the show, not for the prize, for their health. At first, Danny said he didn't want to do the documentary because of the scrutiny he would get, because of the scrutiny he got in the past. But he did it anyway because he wanted to be relatable to people. And he knows that everyone has their own vice. Weight, obviously, being his. Olivia says that Biggest Loser was the best thing that ever happened to her. And since being on Biggest Loser and losing weight, she ended up having a baby at 44. And she ended up naming her son after Bob. Bob's name is Bob Harper, so she named her son Harper. And she says that she is really close to Bob to this day. Suzanne says that there are no positives of being on Biggest Loser. And Tracy was asked, would you go on Biggest Loser today again? And then she's like, that's like, that's so crazy. Like with everything I know now, like that would just be so impossible to answer. Like she won't say fucking no. Just say no. Put your 10 toes down and say no. But also at the same time, like she thinks if she never went on Biggest Loser, then she never would have made all the big changes in her life. Since she went on Big Loser, kind of like gave her the courage to leave her abusive, loveless marriage. Nowadays, Tracy is remarried and she has 6 kids combined with her husband. Tracy says, like, for the longest time, she always needed external motivation, and now that's not necessary for her. She always used to lose weight, and she wanted people to say, oh, you look great. She wanted other people to cheer her on, but now she can just cheer for herself. And she said, the show didn't change my life. I changed my life. Then we're wrapping up. On the screen, it says, Jillian declined to be involved. And after the New York Post article, Dr. Huizinga sued the Post and Joelle for defamation. The Post removed the article, and then at the end there's like a graph, and it shows at 2004 when the show was released, 32% of USA adults were obese. Now, 45% of American adults are obese. You know, the Biggest Loser did not cure the obesity epidemic, unfortunately, if you didn't know. Sochi doesn't want to hear about this anymore, but I don't blame her. It has taken me so long to film this because I, like, don't know how I feel. Like, I guess when I was, like, watching it, I was like, oh, this is interesting, but, like, nothing was really shocking. You know, it's kind of like when I heard that Kelly Clarkson was, like, in a slave contract after winning American Idol. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I don't want to say, like, I feel neutral about it. Like, I don't love the documentary. I don't hate it. It just kind of felt like a nothing burger to me. I posted on my community tab about this, and it seemed like a handful of you guys were disappointed about the docuseries, because I posted a picture of Aubrey Gordon in the documentary. I was like, torturing myself for you guys, JK. It's kind of been interesting so far. You guys were talking a lot about how Aubrey Gordon, like, basically was celebrating Bob Harper's heart attack. Someone else says, was anyone else kind of disappointed with the documentary? I was hoping for more salacious and in-depth. Instead, it was kind of like The Biggest Loser wasn't healthy or effective, and I'm just like, yeah, we know. One of you guys also said, I finished the documentary a few days ago, and I'm low-key frustrated that it focuses so much on the humiliation aspect of the show because that wasn't a secret. They put that on TV and millions saw it. I wish they focused more on behind-the-scenes conflict between the doctors and the trainers, or how the show portrayed weight loss in general, etc. Example, weight loss must be punishing and painful to work for. Kind of missed opportunity in my opinion. I thought it'd be interesting to know more about the behind-the-scenes stuff, but I wonder if there were certain qualms or, like, people would only go on the show if, like, certain subjects would have been avoided, or, like, if they did have any juicy, like, behind-the-scenes clips, like, maybe they were, like, deleted or archived so they couldn't show anything that was, like, super insane or abusive. The one person I just read the comment from, she was like, the woman who was on season 8 that was like, I watched the show before I auditioned, and then she was shocked when the trainer yelled at her, which would be like auditioning for season 3 of Rock of Love with Bret Michaels, and then being surprised they expect you to make out with Bret Michaels. I just don't understand, like, I'm throwing my notebook around here. Let me get through all my 75 pages of notes. I feel like there is 3 categories of people that were in The Biggest Loser. It was people that were bitter about the show, which was Joelle and Suzanne. They literally need to work their way onto the Housewife series. I think those 2 women would do amazing there. They seem to live for the drama. I don't know if Tracy would fall into, like, a positive experience or a negative, because I feel like at the end of the day, like, Tracy did really benefit from The Biggest Loser, but she also holds more accountability for her actions. Like, then we have, like, the positive people like Olivia, Hannah, and Tracy, and then we have people that seems to have gotten literally nothing out of the show, like Danny and Ryan, who have gained a lot of their weight back, if not more. I don't know, I'm just kind of like a life is what you make it type gal, and a lot of times in life, what you put into something is exactly what you're going to get out of it. Of course, like, I don't think that people should have been abused on the TV show or, like, made to barf and pass out from working out so much. And obviously, I hope you know that I don't think it's healthy to eat 800 calories a day and work out for fucking 7 hours a day. At the end of the day, while people think it was a weight loss show, it was a competition. It was a game show. And there obviously has never been another TV show like The Biggest Loser. Like, it's honestly fucking insane. Because, you know, it's different for, like, Survivor, or what's that other one? Like, America's Greatest Race or something. Like, there's been TV shows that rely on, like, I guess your strength and, like, your physical ability, but never on weight loss as a competition. Obviously, there's been some sort of weight shows, like Secret Eaters, but it wasn't so focused on, like, who could lose the most weight in the shortest amount of time. Like, I don't think there will ever be a show like Biggest Losers. I mean, obviously we have 600-pound life, but that's not a competition. Like, there are aspects of The Biggest Loser that we can, like, see in other shows, but it's never going to be as extreme as Biggest Losers. I just thought it was really interesting to see where people were now after the show, especially because the show has been completely over with for almost 10 years now. And it was really nice to see that some of the people have kept off the weight, and even if they did gain weight again after the show, that they still found some sort of way to lose weight, or were able to lose weight with the help of Ozempic, like Joelle and Susan. It seemed like, I assume Tracy just continued to keep her weight off with just regular, diet and exercise, because she didn't give a little fucking Ozempic promotion like Joelle and Susan did. But I also think it's interesting that all of the women kept their weight off, but the men didn't. And I don't know if that's because there's just so much more pressure in society for women to be thin and, like, be found attractive. And, well, obviously, like, Olivia needed to lose weight to have children, but there's something in Ryan and Danny's head that, like, did not click while during the TV show or after the TV show, because they gained all of their weight back, if not more. Like, I just don't know what to, like, feel or say, because I feel like it should just be, like, common sense. I feel like most people know that The Biggest Loser was chaotic and harmful and not good. I don't know if it's just because I listen to so many different pop culture or celebrity podcasts. I might have my third eye a little bit open to Hollywood and production and reality TV and stuff, but it's just, like I said, it was interesting to learn more about people's experience and where they are nowadays, because everyone, obviously, that went on The Biggest Loser, they have some sort of unhealthy relationship with food and exercise, whether that be just overeating, like, due to emotions, or, some people actually having some sort of diagnosable ED. If you are super large, if you are humongous, you have to have some sort of ED, because it takes some sort of dedication to get that big. It's not just, overeating ice cream at the end of the night and being a little overweight. Like with Danny, it just felt like such a cop-out to be like, well, there's no aftercare program. It's like, okay, well, you didn't go to, like, fucking inpatient rehab and then have to, like, start going to outpatient. It's kind of like your responsibility to keep the weight off. Where in the contract did it say, like, we're going to provide everyone gym memberships and therapy and blah, blah, blah? It's like, can you, like, not take any sort of fucking accountability for becoming obese again? If you don't cut the head off the snake, you're just going to continue in that cycle for the rest of time, until either your death or until you get to chopping the head off the snake. And it seems like, I guess obviously I don't know, like, the women in the documentary personally, but it seemed like a lot of the women that were interviewed in the show, they, have broke some sort of cycle, or are currently just in a good state where they have lost weight and are healthier, whether that be from exercising and eating healthily or with the help of prescription medication like Ozempic. I don't know, I feel like this is all over the place. When you guys also said, I felt like Aubrey Gordon honestly ruined the documentary. She was the only side that was really pushing a narrative and being really extremely biased, which I agree with, but also at the same time, I felt like Joelle and Suzanne really, like, pushed Biggest Loser being toxic, and it felt like them and Aubrey Gordon also took, like, no personal responsibility. Obviously, the show's extreme, but you chose to put yourself on the show, and then Joelle, like, put in no effort while being on the show, which then made Bob Harper, like, flip the fuck out because he was so annoyed. I feel like Joelle was in the wrong, because when that first happened, I was like, okay, like, maybe Bob was, like, being a little too extreme. But then, realizing that Carla no longer talks to her because Joelle, like, fucked up the situation so bad, also kind of, like, made me feel like Joelle was low-key a villain in that season. And she was acting like she was completely clueless of why things happened the way it did. When you guys said, it's a common practice to interview people while sitting down, but it had to be angled so the viewers didn't see Aubrey Gordon's humongous body and get distracted. Yeah, which is hilarious, because they did show Danny, like, being pretty large, like, but with Danny, he was, like, pretty far back, so you could see all of his voluptuous adipose tissue. But Aubrey Gordon was like behind a table. So I felt like, obviously you can't hide her fatness, but I think it was a choice to put her behind a table, or she either made them put her behind a table so we couldn't see her belly hang out of her t-shirt like it did in all of her documentary. I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like I should have like some outrageous opinion and be screaming and pissed off, but I'm just like, I don't know, like, like it just makes sense, I guess. Like, maybe I'm just like so numb to how fucked up the world is and how messed up Hollywood is and reality TV, so maybe I just can't be shocked anymore. Maybe the show was more shocking to people that just like consume media and like don't think critically about things. When I watch anything nowadays, I always just feel like, you know, what's the narrative? What are people trying to push? Why is this being filmed? Like, what is the purpose? So if you just watch The Biggest Loser and you're like, yay, people lost weight and they won $250,000, then watching this documentary and seeing like people sharing their experience and, you know, talking about, what did they even talk about? I don't know, like Joelle being yelled at, or Suzanne talking about how it's the worst thing that she's ever done, or, you know, like the doctor talking about how he wasn't brought to all the challenges and, you know, people got hurt doing fucking crazy things, like they were on one of those what's that one, or like the challenges on that one fucking Japanese TV show, like.
And here's Rhonda Merkin. She and some girlfriends invented a rug recycling machine called the Carpet Muncher.
Ooh, looks like she's gonna go wall to wall, Vic.
Right you are, Kid.
I don't know. Whoa, losing 200 pounds in 7 months is bad and crazy? Like, do you have no fucking frontal lobe? No shit, Sherlock. I don't know, I feel like I'm just rambling. I'm just like, the show was bad. The show is not realistic. But that does not make weight loss and exercise inherently bad. I feel like people that have an unhealthy relationship with food, weight, exercise, body image, you know, people in the fat acceptance community, people that struggle with EDs, you know, they're going to watch this documentary and be like, yeah, weight loss in the diet industry is unhealthy and toxic. And it's just going to further perpetuate their bias about the subject, instead of being like, yeah, maybe the show was too extreme and it wasn't healthy. Like, I wish there was some sort of education or like infographic at the end talking about like how healthy weight loss is still possible, because, you know, nowadays you got to tell people how to think. You can't leave people up to their own devices, or they're just going to take in information and fuel their own personal bias. I wonder if the fat acceptance community is talking about this documentary. I'll have to do some looking, because I'm sure Aubrey Gordon has made another post about it or something, you know, since she's, oh, actually, I don't know if she could even post about it. I'm sure maybe she signed some sort of NDA because she was in this. I don't know. But this just puts more credibility under Aubrey Gordon's belt, which makes me pissed off, because I feel like she has faked her way into becoming a credible source about anti-fatness and weight bias and blah, blah, blah. Like, the same thing with Tess Holliday. It's like, they continue to, like, pretend that they're professional, so then they keep getting hired for more professional things, and it's like, you don't know anything about health and wellness. All you know is about BINGE, and you pretend you have Anna. That's all you know. You're a professional fucking liar. That's what you are. Let me know what you guys think. Sorry, I have no radical opinions, which is probably a first. I'm just like, getting a little loopy now. My opinion of the documentary, no shit, Sherlock. But doesn't mean that it's toxic to lose weight. It's just toxic to be on The Biggest Loser and lose weight like that. It's still not good to be morbidly obese. It's still not good to eat McDonald's for every meal. We still need to take care of ourselves. Just don't eat 800 calories a day and work out for 7 hours a day. That's all I'm asking of you. If you enjoyed this very boring video, make sure to like this video. And if you enjoy me, consider subscribing. I would love to see you back here again. I hope you have a great day. Take care. Peace.